Hello, I'm Brian Lucareli, Director of our Private Client Services Group and co-chair of our Family Offices team at Foley and Lardner. And today I'm here with Stephanie Derks, an associate and member of our Estate and Trust Practice Group. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks, Brian.
And today we're going to discuss business succession planning, how to avoid the planning pitfalls like the Roy family and HBO Succession, which I will tell you, Stephanie, is a fan favorite of mine. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, would you mind just sharing a little bit of your business background with our audience before we jump into the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Brian mentioned, I'm an attorney in our Estates and Trust Practice Group. My work really focuses on working with business succession planning, closely held businesses, and then also on intergenerational wealth transfers.
Perfect. So let's jump into the conversation. So, question one, how can family members of a family-owned business avoid the conflicts that we see on the TV show like Succession?
Sure. So to start, I thought we could just kind of go over the background of Succession for some of our viewers who may not be familiar with the show. So the show focuses on a very wealthy family. They own a media conglomerate. The father, Logan Roy, he currently controls the business. He's the head. And all of his children are kind of trying to fight to take over for him. He has four children, three of which, kind of all want attention from him and wanna take over the business. And from there, there's a lot of conflict and a lot of drama.
So, as a passionate watcher, I'm looking forward to this conversation, and it also sounds a little bit like your daily life sometimes.
Yes, always exciting for us estate planners when pop culture and work converge.
All right, so here we go. In the show, there's a lot of uncertainty, as you mentioned, as to what would happen if Logan is no longer running the business. So, how can families who own a business avoid this kind of conflict?
The most obvious answer to this question is, of course, just to have a succession plan in place. In the show, it seemingly Logan doesn't have any sort of succession plan. And as a result of this, it's really unclear what would happen if he's no longer able to run the business. All of his children are really trying to take over from him. So it results in a lot of conflict within the family, but even conflict among, other major shareholders, among the board, other executives, because no one really knows what's going to happen. So it's definitely very important for owners of closely held businesses or family run businesses to think about what's going to happen if you're no longer able to run the business. And as a estate planning attorney, a lot of times we think of these things in, what would happen after your lifetime. But another equally important concept is what would happen if you no longer had the capacity to run the business. A lot of people have plans in place, and thinking of family offices, they may have someone designated to, manage their investments, manage their real estate, but that person might not be the same person you want managing your closely held business. And so it's important to think through, kind of who's managing what, particularly while you're still living, but maybe while you don't have the capacity to manage that asset. So I think that's, an important starting point is just to have that plan in place.
Well, great point. So what if you have a situation like in the show where there are multiple children who all want to run the business?
So we usually advise families to really think through management and control versus the economic benefits of the business versus, exit options. And we do this to really try to, ensure everyone is treated fairly. In family situations where you might have multiple children who all want to control the business, a lot of times we'll see families forming some sort of family committee. And this family committee is where either all or a majority of the family must agree on major business decisions. And these decisions could include, electing board members or, executives like CEO. It could be, when are we going to make distributions versus reinvestment? When are we going to sell? When are we going to merge? Or perhaps they're not voting on those decisions, but they're voting in the person who will make those decisions. And again, what we're trying to do here is just to make it fair so that all children feel like they kind of have a say. And if they all want to run this business, this is giving them a chance again to kind of all have a say in how things are going to go. I would say, unlike the show, what we see a lot more of is maybe one child who wants to run the business. And, there's, maybe a couple other kids who really have no interest in it. And in that case, again, we're thinking, okay, maybe we'll give control to the one child, but, the other children, they're still going to be owners, thinking of that economic benefit. We want all of our children to be equal. How are we going to reduce conflict. Going back to the show Succession, you can imagine if one of the kids had control over everything, guaranteed
Right.
the other ones aren't going to be happy about something and some sort of argument is going to come up. So in situations like this, where maybe one child will be managing the business and other children are not, we kind of think of, well, maybe giving those non-managing children some sort of exit right. For example, they could have a put right. They could, which is, going to the company and saying, hey, I want out, buy my shares. The company would agree to then buy their shares for a certain fair market value. Again, we're just trying to reduce conflict within the family and try to kind of make everyone happy. Now, obviously, not all businesses are going to have the liquidity just to, buy out a child on demand. So that might not be an option for all businesses. Another way to kind of manage that conflict could be, well, if you have one child who's in management, maybe you have an independent trustee or an independent board of directors. And that way there's some sort of checks and balances between the different family members. Maybe that independent trustee or that independent board, maybe they are making certain business decisions. Maybe they have veto options over what, the managing child is doing. But again, we're just trying to make sure that everyone in the family kind of has a say and no one is feeling like, one child is kind of chosen over the other ones. Um, and, I would also say too, kind of thinking through these different scenarios in the show, it's maybe questionable if any of the children can really run this business after, if their father weren't around anymore. Families, maybe that's not the situation, but maybe it's a situation where none of the kids want to. And so maybe no one wants to run the business. But, if the owner wants to keep that business going, maybe they have key employees they want to retain. So as they're thinking through the succession planning, well, if none of their kids want to take over, their kids would still probably be owners. Maybe they'd be non-voting owners or voting owners, but maybe you want to retain key business people. And how would you do that? Would you give those key business people equity rights, special compensation considerations? Again, just kind of thinking through the different scenarios that might occur. And then I would say finally, probably one of the simplest solutions to all of this would just be to sell. Of course, if you're selling the business, really that just kind of negates all these problems. Your children can't fight over this asset if you no longer have it. So obviously, this is the simplest solution. It might not work for everyone, but if the market is right and if you really want to have a happy family and you don't want to worry about this, that of course is an option as well.
So it sounds like your job's a little bit counselor, legal counselor, as well as psychiatrist.
Yes, exactly. Lots of things to think through when we're working through these
Sounds like it.
succession.
So our conversation has been focused around family business, but can these concepts also be applied elsewhere?
Yes. So, when you think of a family office, they might have all different kinds of assets. They may have a closely held family business. They may have real estate, investments, philanthropy. And so, again, we really just want to think through, each different part. Who's going to manage and control that asset? Who's getting the economic benefit of that asset? And what would happen if a family member wants out? When I talked about this kind of concept of the family committee, we've seen this in sort of business succession planning, but we've also seen it with families who own, important parcels of real estate, and they want to keep that real estate within the family. And again, kind of thinking through, well, how would that be managed after mom and dad are gone? What are we going to do with that? And so again, I think these concepts really can apply to kind of all different kinds of assets. And then going back to as well, trying to diffuse conflict within the family, we have these different types of assets. And again, maybe you do have a child who would be really suited to run your closely held business. You want them to manage it, but maybe you have other children who'd be really good with investment or philanthropy. So another way, again, to diffuse conflict is to think through what are the different roles for children within the family, and how can we really have them pursue those roles and achieve different goals. So again, maybe not everyone's fighting for one thing, but we're ensuring that children kind of fit in different ways, and they're all kind of feeling happy, and that they're kind of fitting in their the right place within the family and what they want to achieve.
Well, Stephanie, I want to thank you for your time and your expertise today. I also want to thank you for making a topic and making it real life in terms of succession and the success that is enjoined on television. And want to thank all of you for watching our presentation. For more information, please visit us at foley.com under Family Offices. Thank you.